you are not presidential unless you're bombing someone. And you're not defending human rights unless you're bombing someone. In fact, to a large extent, Trump has been criticized by the human rights community for not engaging in war enough in places like Syria. In fact, there was an interesting editorial piece in the New York Times, really Mao Mounting Trump, saying the title of it was Trump ran on a campaign to tame rogue states, and now they're taming him. And it was belittling him for not doing enough against Venezuela and North Korea and Iran. And this is from a liberal perspective. But this is the world we live in. We believe that war is the answer to everything. And because we are a warlike society, of course, Jimmy Carter said we are the most warlike nation that has ever existed. Isn't that amazing? And interestingly, he said, look at China. This was in a conversation to Trump, because Trump had called him up to get some advice on China. And Jimmy Carter said, well, look at China. They're building, high-speed trains. And he said to Trump, where are your high-speed trains? And where are they? Where are the homes for people in this town? As they drive around the beautiful Bay Area and see tent cities. I was in Los Angeles, too, on this trip. I was shocked at the state of downtown Los Angeles. It looks like something from a dystopic movie. Where are our resources going? They're going to these wars. And I would say, as we enter the 2020 elections, and it's going to be harder to speak of these issues, I'm always told, oh, well, it's going to get harder for you to give these talks because everyone cares about the elections. But if you care about Medicare for all, and you care about student debts being wiped out, and you care about homeless people getting taken care of, you have to care about stopping these wars. We're spending trillions of dollars. $6 trillion we've spent on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq alone. And according to retired Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, who helped lie us into the Iraq War, he has now admitted that, and he said he's sorry for it. He wrote the Yellow Cake speech for Colin Powell. He says, I don't want that to happen again. He wrote an editorial in the New York Times saying that. And he estimates that if the U.S. attacks Iran, it will be more costly in terms of lives and treasure than the war in Iraq. 10 times more costly. So you were talking about millions dead and many trillions more spent. A war in Iran, to me, could be the coup de grace for the world as we know it, and our country as we know it, and human civilization. I mean, we just can't afford, as a species, that type of conflict. And yet, we seem every day to be getting closer and closer to that type of conflict. And so, again, I know I'm talking largely to folks who understand this and understand the importance of fighting imperialism and fighting war and fighting U.S. aggression, but we have to find a way to communicate that to people who see what's happening to our own country, but can't somehow link it to what the U.S. is doing abroad. Even if you look at drugs, for example, of course, as many of you know, and I always like to point this out, though, when the U.S. invaded Afghanistan after 9/11, the Taliban had been successful to almost nearly eradicating all the heroin in Afghanistan. Now, post-invasion, with U.S. soldiers all over that country, and the CIA and the DEA and all sorts of U.S. assets are running around Afghanistan, Afghanistan is supplying 85% of the world's heroin. And so here's, again, another example of how war comes home to roost. Meanwhile, we've spent over $10 billion in Colombia to so allegedly fight drugs there. And after that $10 billion, the White House admitted there's been no decrease whatsoever in coca production or cocaine trafficking out of Colombia. And Colombia is now producing 70% of the world's cocaine. And so these wars just continue to have impacts, sometimes intended, sometimes not, which are killing us all, in truth and in a very real way. And we have to stand up to these wars, and we have to prevent a war in Iran. That's my message. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.